My name is Caroline, though most people just call me Carrie. I am 57 years old now, and life has carved lines into my face that I never asked for. Lines of laughter, yes, but also of grief, loss, and memories that refuse to let me go. When I look in the mirror, I don't just see a woman in her 50s. I see a mother who once lived through hell. If you're watching this, you might think you know what it means to lose something precious. But unless you've ever stood in an empty bedroom, clutching a blanket that still carries the faint scent of your child, wondering if you'll ever hold them again, you don't know the particular ache that hollowed me out all those years ago. My daughter. Lily was only 7 when she vanished. It was a Saturday morning like any other. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood back then, the kind where kids still rode their bikes until the streetlights came on. And everyone waved hello at the grocery store. I remember tying Lily's shoelaces for her because she was always in such a hurry. Her golden hair fell into her face and she scrunched her nose when I brushed it back. "Mom, I can do it myself," she huffed, though her little hands still fumbled with the laces. I kissed her forehead. "You can do a lot of things, my love. But today, I had no idea it would be the last morning I would see her safe." We were headed to the park. Lily ran ahead of me, chasing a red ball another child had kicked. It couldn't have been more than 20 seconds that she was out of my sight. 20 seconds. And then she was gone. At first I thought she was hiding, playing a game. I called her name, my voice light and playful at first. Then louder. Then louder still until it cracked with panic. Strangers joined me, searching bushes, calling out, "Lily, Lily." But she didn't answer by the time the police came. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone to call my husband, Richard. He rushed over, his face white as a sheet, demanding answers no one could give. The hours bled into days, the days into weeks. Flyers with Lily's face plastered across every post. News stories, interviews, tips that led nowhere. And then silence. The case went cold. People stopped calling. Neighbors who once came by with casseroles began to avoid eye contact in the grocery store. It was as though my grief had become an inconvenience, a reminder of a darkness they didn't want near their lives. Richard and we didn't survive it. The loss hollowed out our marriage. He drowned in work, I drowned in sorrow, and somewhere in between we lost each other. He left 2 years later, and though I can't blame him entirely, part of me still resents that I had to carry the weight of Lily's absence alone. For 20 years, I lived with the ghost of my child. Her room became a shrine, untouched. As though she might walk back through the door one day and complain about homework or ask for ice cream. I would sit there sometimes just breathing in the quiet, aching for the sound of her laughter. And then one night the phone rang. It was late, past midnight. My first thought was that it was a wrong number. Or worse, bad news about my mother, who had been ill. But when I answered, a voice I hadn't heard in 2 decades whispered my name, "Mom." I froze. My knees buckled. I had to sit down, clutching the phone with both hands as if it might disappear. "Lily?" I whispered. "It's me, Mom. It's really me." My heart thundered so loudly I thought it would burst. She told me she had been found, that she was safe now, that someone had helped her escape. I could barely process the words. After 20 years, my baby girl was alive. The next day, officials confirmed it. A young woman had come forward saying she was Lily. DNA tests proved it. My world flipped upside down. When I saw her for the first time, walking into that sterile government office, my breath caught. She was grown now 27 years old, but her eyes were the same. Bright green, the exact shade I used to see when she looked up at me with wonder as a child. I ran to her. We collapsed into each other's arms, sobbing, holding on as if to make up for every lost year. My daughter was home. My prayers had been answered. But what I didn't know that day was that her return wasn't the end of my nightmare. It was only the beginning, because the secrets Lily carried back with her would rip open wounds. Deeper than her disappearance ever had. Secrets about where she had been. Secrets about who had taken her. And secrets about my own family that I never imagined were possible. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because you will not believe what happened next. Asterisk, when Lily came back into my life. I thought the world had finally tilted back onto its axis. I thought the years of nightmares, of crying myself to sleep, of begging God for answers had finally been answered. But life has a way of twisting joy into something unrecognizable. The first days after her return were a blur of tears, laughter, and awkward adjustments. I kept staring at her face, memorizing every line, every feature, afraid she might vanish again if I blinked too long. She moved into my house, into the very room I had kept preserved for her. Though, of course, she was no longer that little girl with pink ribbons and stuffed animals. Still, I wanted her to feel at home. I wanted to erase the years we had lost. But even as we hugged, even as she whispered, "I love you, Mom," something unsettled me. Lily was distant, not cold, but guarded, as though she were carrying something inside her that she couldn't share. At night, I would hear her pacing her room. Sometimes I would hear muffled sobs through the thin walls. Once I caught her staring out the window, her eyes scanning the street like she expected someone to be lurking. "Sweetheart," I asked gently one morning, "are you afraid someone's following you?" She hesitated, her spoon clinking against her cereal bowl. "I don't know if I should tell you everything yet." My heart stilled. "Lily, you can tell me anything." Her eyes flicked up to mine, haunted. "Not everything, Mom. Some things will break you." Those words stayed with me. They gnawed at me while I folded laundry, while I made dinner, while I tried to pretend we were just another mother and daughter making up for lost time. But I knew something darker was waiting beneath the surface. It came one night. Weeks later, when she finally broke, we were sitting in the living room. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. Lily suddenly muted it and turned to me. Her hands were trembling. "Mom, do you remember the day I disappeared?" she asked. I swallowed hard. I could never forget. Her jaw tightened. It wasn't random. It wasn't some stranger. I felt my blood run cold. "What do you mean?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I was taken. By someone you knew. Couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in. Lily, her voice cracked as she whispered, "Dad." I shook my head violently. No, Lily. Your father loved you. He was devastated when you disappeared." He wasn't devastated, Mom," she cut in, her voice bitter. "He planned it." The room spun around me. I gripped the armrest of the couch to steady myself. My ex-husband, Richard, the man I once shared a bed and life with, the man who cried with me the night Lily vanished, was telling me he had been the monster behind it. "You don't know what you're saying," I whispered. "You must be confused, baby." "I'm not confused," she screamed, startling me. Then her voice broke into sobs. "He kept me, Mom. He and another woman. He said you didn't deserve me, that you were weak, that he'd give me a better life." My skin went clammy. A rush of memories hit me. The way Richard grew more distant after her disappearance. The way he left me 2 years later. The fact that he never once let me search his new life too closely. "Oh, God," I whispered, my hands covering my mouth. Lily reached for me, her nails digging into my skin. "I lived with him for years. I was hidden, controlled. When I got older, I tried to escape. That's when—" She hesitated, her eyes darting away. "That's when things got worse. He wasn't alone anymore. Who was he with?" I demanded, my voice hoarse. Her lips trembled. "His new wife. The one he left you for." A chill ran down my spine. Richard had remarried a woman named Vanessa, much younger, beautiful, and cruel in a way that had always unsettled me when I saw her from afar. They had disappeared to another town years ago, cutting ties completely. I thought he was simply moving on with his life. I never imagined he was hiding my daughter in plain sight. "Mom," Lily whispered, her eyes hollow. "Vanessa hated me. She called me your shadow. She said I was a burden. She hurt me." I wrapped my arms around her as she shook. My tears fell into her hair as I whispered, You're safe now. You're safe with me. But inside, a storm of rage and disbelief consumed me. How could he? How could Richard steal our child, shatter my life, and then live with her all those years as if nothing happened? But the worst was yet to come. Lily pulled back, her eyes sharp. Mom, there's more. Something you need to know. What is it, baby? She hesitated, then whispered, It wasn't just Dad and Vanessa. They weren't the only ones keeping me there. Someone else in our family knew. Someone you still trust. My breath caught in my throat. Who? But she only shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I can't tell you yet. I need you to be strong first. If I say it now, it'll destroy you. My world tilted. Every relative, every friend, every person I'd leaned on during the years of her absence flashed through my mind. Who among them could betray me like that? I couldn't sleep that night. I couldn't eat. Every glance Lily gave me was weighted with unspoken words, with pain she wasn't ready to share. But I knew one thing for certain, this wasn't over. Her return had not given me peace. It had only dragged me into a new war. And as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I whispered into the dark, Richard. Vanessa, whoever else helped you, you don't know who you're dealing with now. You stole my daughter. You broke me once. But this time, I will break you. Asterisk, when I was younger, I believed that truth, no matter how painful, was always better than a lie. But after Lily came home and whispered those words that her father had stolen her from me, that someone else in my family had helped him, I began to wonder if some truths were too jagged to hold in bare hands. The following days felt like walking through fog. Every sound in the house seemed sharper. Every glance from Lily was heavy with things unsaid. And every memory I had of Richard, of his new life, now twisted into a grotesque lie. I told myself I needed proof. I told myself that if I could just gather enough evidence, I could confront him, confront Vanessa, and make them pay for what they had done. But where does a 56-year-old woman even begin to hunt monsters she once called family? The first step was talking to Lily. Though every conversation with her was like stepping into a minefield, sweetheart, I asked one morning, pouring her coffee the way I used to when she was just a little girl sneaking sips at the kitchen table. Can you tell me how it started? When he took you. Her hand trembled on the mug. For a moment, I thought she would refuse again. But then she sighed. I remember it too well, she whispered. You dropped me at school. I was supposed to meet you after your shift. But Dad was there. He said you had asked him to pick me up instead. My stomach dropped. Richard knew my schedule back then. He knew exactly when I'd be too distracted to notice. I didn't question it. Lily continued, her eyes dark with memory. He bought me ice cream on the way. He promised we'd see you soon. But instead, he drove me to a house I didn't recognize. And that was it. I never saw home again. Her words cut through me like knives. Why didn't you run? I asked softly. She let out a bitter laugh. I was a child, Mom. And later, when I did try, Vanessa. She made sure I couldn't. I reached across the table, clutching her hand. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. But she pulled back, shaking her head. You don't understand. They weren't the only ones. I heard things. I saw letters. Someone else, someone close to you, helped them keep me away. Someone fed them information about you, about what you were doing all those years. I froze. Who? I whispered, my throat tight. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Not yet. I can't. My patience cracked. Lily, you owe me the truth. I spent my life mourning you. I buried myself in grief while you were alive in his house. How can you keep protecting whoever it was? Her eyes flashed with pain. Because once you know, you'll never see the world the same way again. She left the kitchen then, retreating upstairs, leaving me shaking in my chair. That night, I sat at my old desk, pulling out dusty boxes of letters and papers. I searched through everything I had kept from those years, the police reports, the private investigators' notes, even the anonymous tips that led nowhere. As I flipped through one yellowed envelope, I froze. The handwriting. I knew it. It belonged to my sister Claire. I remembered her urging me back then. Not to waste money on private investigators telling me maybe Lily had been taken far away. Maybe I'd never find her. At the time, I thought she was trying to protect me from more heartbreak. But now, staring at the scrawled note, "Don't look near Richard." He moved on. Let it go. I felt my blood run cold. Had my own sister betrayed me? I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. My thoughts spun in circles until I thought I'd collapse. I wanted to storm into her house and demand answers, but a voice inside me told me to be careful. If Claire truly was involved, if she had helped Richard, then confronting her without proof would only drive her deeper into denial. Instead, I began to watch. I created a social media account, something I'd avoided all these years, but now seemed like the only way to learn what people said behind closed doors. And what I found after that confrontation with Claire, something inside me broke hand, something else woke up. For years, I had been surviving, going through the motions, carrying grief like a heavy coat I could never take off. But that night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. And a single thought repeated in my mind like a drumbeat. They think I'm weak. They think they won, but I wasn't weak. Not anymore. I decided right then that if Richard, Vanessa, and Claire had spent years weaving lies, I would spend whatever time I had left unweaving them thread by thread. Until they were exposed, the first step was gathering proof. Rage alone wasn't enough, so I started with Claire. I dug through old boxes in the attic, letters she had written me after Lily disappeared. The cheerful tone always felt wrong back then. But now I saw the patterns, her insistence that I let go, her urging me not to waste money on more searches. It was all there. Subtle manipulations dressed up as sisterly advice. I placed every letter in a folder. Then I printed screenshots of her online comments, her smiling face under pictures of my daughter in Richard's home. Piece by piece, I was building a case, but proof on paper wasn't enough. I needed to hear it. So I bought a small recorder, something I could slip into my purse. And I invited Claire to dinner at my house. She arrived nervous, maybe sensing that the air between us had changed. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began softly as we sat at the table. "About Richard telling you it was better for Lily. Maybe I overreacted." Her shoulders relaxed, her relief almost pitiful. "I knew you'd understand eventually, Carolyn. It was never about hurting you. He said Lily would grow up safe, away from your grief." I clenched my fists under the table. Safe? In his prison. "Did he ever tell you why he really took her?" I asked carefully. Claire hesitated. Then, almost in a whisper, she admitted. "He said he deserved her more. He said you didn't need her the way he did." My throat went dry. "And you believed him?" I asked, my voice shaking. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I didn't know what else to do. He promised she'd have a better life. He promised me too." Her voice trailed off. "Promised you what?" I pressed. She looked away, shame painted across her face. "Money. He helped me pay off my debts." I thought I had no choice. The recorder in my purse captured every word. When she left that night, hugging me awkwardly at the door, I didn't hug her back. I just watched her walk away, my heart a battlefield of fury and devastation. My own sister had sold my child for cash, but now I had her confession. The next step was Richard and Vanessa. I hadn't seen Richard in nearly 15 years. The thought of facing him made my stomach churn. But if I wanted the truth, I had to look the monster in the eye. I drove 2 towns over to the house where he lived with Vanessa. The neighborhood was quiet, manicured lawns and tidy fences. Picture of false perfection. My hands shook as I parked down the street from the car. I watched him step outside. He was older, grayer, but still carried that arrogant posture I remembered too well. And beside him was Vanessa, younger than me by at least a decade. Holding his arm like she owned him, I should have turned the car around. But instead, I grabbed my phone and started recording. They walked to the driveway, laughing at something. And then, out of nowhere, I saw her, Lily, standing on the porch. For a moment, my breath caught. Even though she was safe with me now, seeing her in that doorway in my mind's eye, frozen in old pain, was almost too much. I wanted to storm out of the car, scream at them, demand answers. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I followed the plan. I needed them to talk. I needed them to admit it, just like Claire had. The next day, I called Richard. My voice shook, but I kept it steady enough. "It's Carolyn," I said. "We need to talk." There was silence on the line, and then a chuckle that made my skin crawl. Well, after all these years, what could you possibly want? "My daughter," I said, my voice low. "The truth. And maybe closure." He laughed again. "Closure. Carolyn, you had your closure the day you gave up." I gripped the phone until my knuckles whitened. "Meet me tonight. The old cafe on Elm." He hesitated, then agreed. That night when I walked into the cafe, my recorder was already hidden in my coat pocket. Richard sat at the corner booth, smug as ever. "Well, you've aged," he said casually. "Sipping his coffee, and you've rotted," I replied. His smirk faded. "Why did you take her, Richard?" I asked directly. "Why steal our daughter?" He leaned back, folding his arms. "Because you didn't deserve her. You were weak, broken. I gave her stability. I gave her family. Family." I spat. "You call Vanessa family. You call locking her away, cutting her off from me, family?" He shrugged. "She turned out fine, didn't she?" That was it. The monster had spoken his truth, and my recorder had caught every vile word. I leaned forward, my voice steady but sharp. "One day soon, Richard, the whole world will know what you did. You stole a child. You broke me. But you didn't destroy me. And when I'm done, you'll regret underestimating me." His eyes narrowed. "Careful, Caroline. You don't know what you're starting." I stood, shaking with fury, but also with power. For the first time in years, I wasn't powerless. I had his words, his arrogance, his confession, and I wasn't done yet. When I returned home that night, Lily was waiting at the kitchen table. She looked at me, her eyes tired, but her voice steady. "Mom, I remembered something else." Sappy sigh. The night the article went live, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Headlines spread like wildfire. "Mother's search for kidnapped child reveals shocking family conspiracy." Richard's smug face was suddenly plastered on every screen, labeled as the man who had stolen his own daughter. Vanessa's name was dragged into the mud, her neighbors whispering behind her back. Claire couldn't walk into her grocery store without people staring. And my mother hid inside her little blue house, curtains drawn, afraid to face the world. For years. They had painted me as broken, unstable, even unfit. Now, the world saw the truth. But it wasn't just revenge I wanted. It was protection. For Lily, for us. One night, as we sat on the couch together, she whispered, "Mom, what if they try to hurt us for this?" I kissed her forehead. "Let them try. I've lived through the worst already. There's nothing left they can take from me." But deep down, I knew the battle wasn't over. Richard had always been a man who thrived on control. And now that control was slipping. I expected a counterattack, and it came. 2 weeks after the story broke. I woke to find the words LIAR spray painted across my garage. My tires slashed. Anonymous letters in my mailbox, accusing me of making it all up for attention. But instead of fear, I felt steel in my veins. I documented every threat, every message, every piece of harassment. I turned it all over to my attorney. The more they tried to break me, the stronger my case became. And through it all, Lily stood by my side, sometimes trembling, sometimes crying, but always there. She was no longer the little girl they had stolen. She was a young woman now, brave enough to face shadows most people could never imagine. Then came the trial. Sitting in that courtroom, facing Richard, Vanessa, Claire, and even my own mother, it felt like walking into the lion's den. But I wasn't prey anymore. I was the hunter. When the recordings played, the room went silent. Richard's voice, arrogant and unapologetic. Claire's tearful confession. My mother's betrayal. Each word cut through the courtroom like a blade. And when I took the stand, I told my story, not just the facts, but the pain, the years lost. The nights spent staring at Lily's empty bed. By the time I finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the judge's face was tight with restrained anger. The verdict came. Down like thunder. Richard guilty of abduction and fraud. Vanessa complicit in harboring a kidnapped child. Claire charged with aiding and abetting. And my mother, though spared prison due to her age, was found guilty of conspiracy. Her reputation, her legacy, shattered. As I stood outside the courthouse with Lily. The cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, I held her hand high. We weren't victims anymore. We were survivors. And as I looked at my daughter's face in the sunlight, I whispered to myself, they tried to bury us. But we grew roots. And now we bloom. The courthouse victory should have felt like the end of the story. But in truth, it was only the beginning of a new chapter. Because winning in court didn't erase the years I'd lost. It didn't give me back the birthdays, the Christmas mornings, the quiet nights I should have had with Lily. It didn't erase the fact that the people who were supposed to protect me, my mother, my husband, my closest friends, had been the ones who cut me the deepest. What it gave me instead was something I hadn't expected. Freedom. For so many years, I'd been trapped by grief, by lies, by fear of what people thought of me. Now, the truth was out in the open. The world finally knew. And once you've spoken the truth, you can't be silenced anymore. But healing, that was the harder part. At first, Lily and I barely knew how to live together. She was 21 now, no longer the little girl I'd tucked into bed at night. She had her own habits, her own scars, her own ways of hiding pain. Some nights, I would walk past her room and see the light on. She'd be curled up on the bed, scrolling through her phone with tears in her eyes. And I'd have to remind myself I couldn't protect her from everything. All I could do was be there. One night, I knocked softly and stepped inside. "Can I sit?" She nodded, wiping her cheeks. "You don't have to be strong all the time," I told her. She gave a shaky laugh. "Neither do you, Mom." We sat there in silence, and for the first time in years, I realized we didn't have to fill every moment with words. Sometimes love was just presence. The media frenzy eventually died down. People moved on to the next scandal, the next tragedy. But for us, the aftermath lingered. Richard went to prison. Vanessa vanished into obscurity, her name disgraced. Claire tried reaching out once, but I blocked her number. And my mother. Well, my mother lived out her days alone in that little blue house. She sent letters sometimes, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. I never answered. Forgiveness is a choice, but it's not an obligation. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to open the door again. A year after the trial, Lily and I stood in our backyard planting a tree. A maple, strong, resilient. "This will outlive us," Lily said, pressing soil around the roots. "Yes," I whispered, "and it will remind us that no matter what they tried to take, we grew stronger." That tree became our symbol. Every season, as it changed, so did we. Its branches stretched taller, and so did our hope. Life wasn't perfect. It never is. But I learned that perfection isn't the goal piece, is I. Started volunteering at a local support group for parents of missing children. Every time I told my story, I saw faces light up with recognition, with relief. They weren't alone, and neither was I. Lily found her own way too. She began studying psychology, determined to help others who had lived through trauma. "I want to turn what happened into something good," she told me one evening. "Something that helps people heal." And in that moment, I realized we had already won. Not in the courtroom, not in the headlines, but here, in the quiet rebuilding of our lives now. When I sit in my living room with a cup of tea, watching Lily laugh with her friends, I feel something I thought I'd lost forever: contentment. Because the truth is, betrayal doesn't define us. Survival does. Strength does. The ability to rise even when everyone we trusted tried to bury us. As what defines us. I lost so much. But I gained something even greater. a new beginning. And if you're watching this and you feel like your world is crumbling, hear me when I say this: don't give up. Even in the darkest nights, you carry a light inside you. Use it, fight with it. One day you'll look back and realize that you weren't breaking, you were becoming. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. And tell me in the comments if you've ever faced betrayal that almost broke you. Because I promise you, your story doesn't end there. Mine didn't, and neither will yours.